record again so that the nice lady from Zoom can let us know we're all being recorded. And just continue to welcome attendees as you come in. I expect that there might be some late arrivals, but thank you everyone who's joining us for your time in coming along to our webinar. I'd like to thank Scytale and Witz Cybersecurity for providing our fabulous speakers who are joining us here today. This is a growing area of interest for our members in the compliance and risk area. We all know that there are increasing sort of overlapping obligations about your cyber risk space. There might be a very specialised view about your data security or about your privacy obligations, and there might be something a bit more global for you where you have to give assurances to your board around cyber risk and your relationships with third parties or any of that other kind of space. So it can take all kinds of forms. And as we know, for those of you who've participated in the previous webinar that we ran with Scytale, as well as our cyber risk discussion group, ISO 27001 is a really good place that we're finding starts a very holistic conversation around information security across your organisation. So it even doesn't just concentrate on tech. It asks you to think through your risks in a very comprehensive way across your whole of your organisation. So we're really pleased to be able to present this case study with Scytale. Apologies for my puppy contributing to that. She has no idea about cybersecurity. She doesn't have thumbs, but she does try and type from time to time. So I'd like to welcome, so I can go on mute and we don't have to listen to my co-audience. I'd like to invite Carl Morris, who is a distinguished senior compliance manager and a valued client of Scytale from Totango, and Amit from Titango, who have successfully navigated this ISO 27001 process and can really explain to us what they learned through that process, how they went about it, how complicated it is. I'm sure you've got a really great story to tell, and I will hand over to you now. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Naomi. And I think at this point, I will jump straight into some slides and begin sharing. So they should be up on your screen now. If they aren't, please just do let me know. I see nodding heads, so I think we are good to go. So as Naomi said, I'm Kyle from Scytale, and I've had the privilege of being able to work with Totango over the last while. And of course, we are here today to do a case study on ISO with them. For Totango, I think Amit will probably touch on that a little bit shortly, but it's a no-brainer for them. I mean, ISO has been something they've been doing for ages now. So it'll be really, really good and insightful just to get some value and how it's worked for them and what it looked like before Scytale and what it looks like now with an automation platform in place. So first and foremost, I went through myself to introduce Amit again, SVP of Engineering at Totango, a ton of experience in the field of software development and the current company security owner. So with that short intro, Amit, I'd love to hand over to you to add on anything you'd like to and to maybe tell us a little bit about Totango.
Great. Can you hear me, guys?
Loud and clear.
Sure. So can you just turn to the next slide? So Totango is in the field of customer success for the past almost 13 years. And we are one of the main platform in this area. Customer success as a whole is simple, right? Is helping you getting more value out of your customers, right? And I think that this year specifically, it's super, super important, right? Because we want to rely on our existing customer, make them thrive and, eventually get more money for our customers and for ourselves with reduced retention and so on. So this is what customer success is, and this is what Titango does. We have this platform that helps you achieve that. If you will go to the next slide. So these are some examples of, this is real customers, and this is what they are doing with customer success. This is what they are able to achieve, both in revenue, as you can see on the left side, as well as productivity of people, churn reduction, NPS, and so on. So from those angles, we're just helping our customers thrive and be actually better, get value from their customer, or just give them more value. So everyone will be on the spot. And this is customer success as a whole, right? Titango actually differ, and just click to the next slide, please. Titango is a bit different in this area, and this is what makes us unique. So we are a composable platform, so you can actually able to do, the entire thing of from integrate your data in to see some results in the area that you want, because it's a modular platform, in just a week, right? So I know that others are having like more robust onboarding and so on, but since our platform is very modular, we are building that ourselves, so you can just pick your own subject, right? If you want to reduce churn, if you want to make your NPS better, if you want to handle renewal, upsell, whatever you like, and just from a point of integrating the data through the customer first value, as well as analyzing stuff, put that into motion. Like in a week, this is what you're doing, and once you're happy with that and you are starting to deliver some value to your customer, you're getting to the next one, right? So I want to handle renewals and then escalations and so on. This is how it works. Super simple and easy to use. This is what we are doing. And in the next slide, you will be able to see some of our customers in the area, right? So these are, I just took some of them. So we are well invested, around the globe, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, and others. That's it about Totango. And if you have any questions and so on, you can just ping me later or just put it on the chat. And this is about Totango. Let's move to the story of this webinar, which is how we are using Scytale. And I will hand it over to Kyle.
Amazing. Thank you, Amit, for taking us through the journey and the story of Totango. And exactly like you said, if anyone does have any questions, we do have a Q&A coming up at the end, so feel free to pop any questions in there and we'll tackle those in a few minutes time. But exactly like you've already mentioned, Amit, I think now we have the exciting and fun part where just before we jump into the story, I want to talk a little bit about the Scytale platform itself. Obviously, this for you, Amit, is something you see on a daily and a weekly basis from a continuous compliance perspective. But for anyone joining us today, the slide you can currently see on the screen is this quote is one of our CEO's absolute favorites, and it really does hit home that if it seems like a pain and an expense to do compliance, well, consider what might happen when non-compliance sort of takes place and there's deviations and issues around that. So let's maybe set the scene with the old school style of how compliance would work. You would have back and forth with auditors, you would have documents and files and folders, and really just a mess. And it comes audit time and you need to collect information, you need to present it, you're not too sure what's outstanding, the auditor might have additional requests. And like I already used the word mess, I think it's quite accurate. It just becomes a very heavy, laborious, tedious, time-consuming thing. So Scytale is here to solve that all. And essentially, we take this mess and we turn it into a really user-friendly, simple, intuitive, guided platform. So it's based on a web-based app. If you haven't seen it before, feel free to have a look and Google Scytale and have a look, or get involved with the demo or something like that. And just to take you through a few main points around the platform. So what you're seeing in front of you now is the dashboard, or the landing page. And this essentially, compliance isn't a one and done. Amit knows this. I'm sure a lot of you on the call do as well. It's a continuous process. And the dashboard view allows a project manager or the compliance manager to be able to have insight and an overview of all their different projects at any given time. So you could have a look today, you might only have an audit in a year's time, but you want to be continuously ready for whatever audits or whatever framework you're going through. So this landing page really is that. Without having to do any thinking, it will tell you, okay, what position are we in? Are we in a good place? Are we in a bad place? What do we need to action? And what should we be focusing on? If we move into the audit management, which is where all the really good, juicy stuff happens. So this is where we house the actual evidence and the controls are laid out for all the different frameworks. So in this section, the auditor themselves actually get given access to the platform, and everything is done on the web app itself. So you don't have those files and folders and back and forth emails. Communication all happens in the platform. Evidence all gets securely uploaded and retained within the platform for the audit itself. And one thing just to make note of here is the variety of different frameworks that we offer. So no matter what compliance burden you have or what framework you need to complete, we have a solution and an offering for you on that. And we also offer a really neat cross-platform capability and function. So what this means is, obviously and Naomi, in the introduction, you already spoke about different security controls and processes. So it's different frameworks at some point in time may have overlaps of controls. And what's really nice is, depending on the applicability of it in different frameworks, you don't need to do the same task 3 different times. So if you were to go through, let's say, a SOC 2 preparation, and evidence that you've collected would be relevant for ISO, which is obviously the topic of discussion today, you would be able to really easily add that evidence to the ISO framework in the audit screen of the platform itself. So you're doing it once, not twice. Saves everyone time, probably a good thing. And then the final screen I just wanted to touch on is this monitoring screen. So obviously the old school manual auditing side is very old school. We're in 2023, we're in modern times now. Automation is the name of the game now. So you can just see from this metric on screen how many different potential, and I mean, these are just some of the integrations that are connected. The value from this, instead of you going and doing hunting and digging to try and find out where do you have compliance issues across the board, from a system perspective, from HR, source control, network security, whatever it may be, connecting to the integrations and then using the different frameworks will allow you to easily identify where you need to remediate anything. So that's a little bit of insight into the platform. And now, Amit, for us to just jump into the case study itself. So a few questions, and we've really broken this down into a story. So how it began and how it started. So a couple questions, Amit. First one would be, how did you manage your compliance before you engaged with an automation platform like Scytale?
Yeah, so I just saw the screenshots that you have there with all the papers and all the things. This is how it looks in Titango a few years ago. So we are doing both ISO 27 as well as SOC 2, and this is the 9th year that we are doing that. So we know how to do it, right? I would say that, you know, before managing it in Scytale and working with Scytale automation and, you know, integration and so on, it took us like a 3 months project. It was a project in Totango, right? So we created a task force, including you know, IT and DevOps and legal, engineering, HR, like, you know, the entire story. Meeting twice a week, following up in spreadsheets, in Drive, you know, all the things, getting snapshot, losing part of that along the way because it should have been very, you know, strict, ordered, and so on. And to be honest, it was not a happy duty for people, right? So the one that actually called to the task force were actually, you know, bummered. I think that the main feeling that, you know, wrap it all is anxiety, right? We were, you know, for every certificate and every audit, it was like a tension and so on. And this is how it went. And we did that for 7 years, right? Before we met you. So this is how it went. So we just dropped the ball on different people to just make it like reasonable. But doing that twice a year, you can figure it out, right? It's like 6 months of work, not full time, of course, but it was a heavy burden on the organization, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, from what you've already said there, Amit, I had lined up to ask you what were some of the big challenges or the biggest challenge, but I think you've already named quite an extensive list of those. And maybe a really important point is your sort of value or need for the platform was slightly different to maybe a startup that's never done compliance before. You, like you said, you knew what you needed to do, but even already having that prior knowledge and insight for the last 7-8 years was still a headache. It was still a burden. It was setting up these meetings like you've made mention of, and really just a pain. People didn't like it, and it was really time consuming based on what you've said. So let's jump right into the difference now. And first one, why did you choose to look towards an automation platform? What was that main reason for the change?
So yeah, it was one of our auditors, which was EY, actually introduced us to Scytale. It was 2 years ago. And we started understanding that we are doing, all those audits and certificate in a very old-fashioned way. And I think that what catch our eyes is the fact that, reducing tons of manual work, that's for sure. And I think that for me, changing recalibrating people's time into being reviewers of evidences and processes and not collecting them manually is the main thing, right? Because respect to people, right? We don't want them to just go around the entire system getting snapshots here and there with the specificity of, you need to add this date, you need to do that and so on. But having that connected, going into the fact that all the automation is working and evidence are flowing in, and now me as a person in this task force need to review the data or review the evidence and not just getting that. I think this is the main change. The other one is that the system super help us being very organized about that, right? So I have all my audits in one place. I can learn from one another. I can see, I will leave that to a trick later, right? I think we can pass that for now, some tricks on the system. But I think this is like the main change, right? Being a reviewer of the data and not the one that actually collecting that. I think that's what make the huge difference and what was the eye catcher here.
Yeah, that's some great insights, Amit. And for the team at Totango, I'm sure that they were quite happy to transition from that role of being the worker bee to just sort of managing some review and ensuring things are ready rather than doing everything from the ground up. So jumping into some specifics around the project, I mean, I know we already have probably touched on quite a lot of them in your previous answer, but if you were to label some really key highlights from the platform, the preparation process, what was good, what was bad, what really made that difference to you?
Yeah, let me just tackle the previous one as well, because I think it's important to understand that for sure people, become more productive doing, the review because they just shifted from, evidence collector to evidence reviewers. On the other hand, we actually managed to reduce the amount of people in the force. We are not having anyone that has the project management skills. We used to have that almost full time. And now the system help us, doing that role. So it's like reducing the force is another good benefit of going with automation. Actually, to your recent question, so I think that first people are, more productive. That's for sure. And the combination of using the platform as well as some consultancy services, right? It's no secret we are working together on various projects. I think this is a key, a winning factor for us, right? I would say that whenever I hit a wall, I can, get consulting like super available, real time, professional, fun to work. I think it's a factor, at least on our end. And the combination of that makes it super easy, because when I'm putting those tasks on people saying you need to, review this evidence or so on, and they're hitting a wall, they have, or we are supplying, Scytale is helping us supplying some, you have the consultancy, you have the way to see, past evidence, you can see and learn from different, audit that we already did, like the ISO, if we are doing SOC or the other around. So no one is actually hitting the wall, right? Everyone have their tools in order to complete this task of reviewing this evidence for this control. And I think this is like a winning factor for us. Not sure if I answer your question, but I think it was important to mention.
No, absolutely. And one thing for me there is you mentioned the word fun, talking about compliance and audit readiness. I think that's very cool. That's quite new age. I'll definitely take that one as a very nice compliment. Moving away from the headache and the pain
yeah, not sure if it's fun work for everyone or for all companies, but yeah, for us, it's important to do stuff even as boring as collecting evidence or reviewing evidence, and make it fun over that. Then that's for sure.
Yeah, and I suppose the fun can also translate into value, and that makes a big difference rather than it just being this headache the whole time. So final one on this slide, Amit, let's talk timelines. So Scytale out of the picture, how long did your audit readiness take? Scytale in the picture, how long did it take you to get to a point where you were comfortable, confident, you didn't have this anxiety around the project, and you said, cool, let's engage with the auditor and get things going?
Yeah, so I did mention it before. So before Scytale, it took us like 3 months. Very, Asians, people were actually stressed about that. 3 months preparation for that. And once we met Scytale, we started the journey and, collecting evidence, integration, which was like 2 years ago. It was like a bit cranky for us. You remember we started like in an awkward way, but then I think this is part of the thing of having someone helping you, not just consulting wise, but a company that can actually move, push things forward. So integration was a bit cranky at the beginning, and it was okay like a week after. And all in all, it took us 3 weeks. So from 3 months to 3 weeks, I think it says everything, right? And on top of that, and we were connecting and talking about people. So people feeling, people anxiety, people, not looking that as a task that they don't want to have, but a task that it's okay. And, adding some fun into the process, make it easy as well. And the fact that we are telling people you are not the evidence collector, right? You are more than that. You are just reviewing that, and we are having the labor work for machines and not humans. I think this entire story is actually very, very appealing. And I think that's the story, right? From 3 months to 3 weeks, no hassle, and so on. So if you remember, we are starting now, or we started the journey for SOC. And, we had a call and say, okay, we have a SOC soon. So, okay, let's start it. It wasn't a project management. People are just preparing for that. It was, okay, let's start it. Let's connect some integration into place and see it. I think this is how light it is for us now.
Absolutely. And maybe just to tie it back, that initial process, like you mentioned, it began on SOC, but that translation to ISO, obviously, for the purposes of the webinar today, just how, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we were able to sort of start, get everything ready, complete that audit without really thinking about it, and then have that focus placed on ISO for the previous audit period that obviously took place. Put a few things in place, I want to say, because everything was pre-existing. We had new relevant evidence for any change processes within SOC, and then the ISO process really just kicked off, and the audit just took place, really.
Yeah. So
absolutely,
yeah, I think for me it's the one of the biggest benefits. So just as a personal note, I just worked, I think it was yesterday. I had an hour, right, to work on stuff. And I just, started working on my task in the system for the ISO, for the SOC that we're doing now. And I looked into the ISO, and I think this is what I will call my trick, right? So it is super easy to see what was done, what was the evidence, what was the comments and so on for past audits. It doesn't matter if it's ISO or SOC, you can do both. And I would say this is my cheat sheet here. So I'm looking what I was doing last time, and I know what to do. So I managed to just complete, I think, 16 controls in less than an hour. And I took the liberty to take over some tasks of other people because, I did that last time, and now the control is on a different person. I already did that as well. So this is how easy it is. And doing 16 controls before Scytale, it must have been like a week of work, right? Or something like that. So this is my trick, cheat sheet, and this is how we are doing that now.
Absolutely. And then let's move on to our next slide, Amit, and talk about going forwards. So I wanted to talk about some of the ongoing benefits, but I think you've really exhaustively covered that already. You've spoken about the cheat sheet, you've spoken about the time save. and just how much quicker it was. What else can you think about potentially that you maybe haven't mentioned already, that you wouldn't be able to do if the platform wasn't there and able to aid and support you right now?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat all the other stuff that we talked about. People
Yeah, absolutely.
understand the journey from 3 months to 3 weeks and so on. I think that the one point that I will add to that is the fact that Scytale, and not just the system, the combination that I mentioned between the platform and the consultancy is actually super helping us in front of our auditors. So there are some auditors that are using the system, right? So super helpful for them, and the review and the audit is easy, and they know where to find stuff, so it makes it easy on our end. And the fact that you guys are actually doing some of the work, right? Representing us in front of auditors in one cases, or when we are in front of auditors in ISO, for example, then I always have someone to cover my back. So I'm within the audit, I can Slack you, or I can call you, or whatever, and ask you a question. It gives us a lot of confidence in the process on standing in front of an auditor. I think it's some point that is worth mentioning.
Great, thanks, Amit. Yeah, like you've mentioned, no matter how prepared you are, there's always a slight bit of worry or doubt when you're in front of the auditor that something will come up. So to have that reassurance, I suppose is very helpful. And maybe our very final question, just for the case study, for anyone listening, maybe someone on the call or that will listen to the recording afterwards, are there any, apart from, and we've really covered the story from start to end about the product, the consulting side, that you think would be able to help them in making a decision if they're looking to engage with a platform? Any words of advice for a potential customer?
Yeah, I think that looking in how we did that before. So yeah, it took us a lot of time. We had our own consulting, right, that actually helped us, and these were the guys that I call them the project management of the system, of the compliance. So I think that going from that point to Scytale is a huge leap for an organization. And I think that it doesn't relate to your quote earlier. So it doesn't worth not trying that, right? So just try that. Okay, you can have I'm not sure how you are doing that right now, but super easy to integrate. You can demo that. We are all using pretty much, common tools. So Scytale integrates to all my sources, I would say, and just try it. I think that once you will see it in action and see the evidence are flowing, there is no turning back. So it doesn't matter, what you did before. You will see it and see, okay, this is how easy it is, right? And 2 points that I would mention on top of that is, first, the combination of the platform and the consulting from the same firm. This is a win for us. So I want to share it, right? I'm not sure. I'm not pushing people to have both, but guys, this is a winning factor for us. And I think as an organization, the amount of work that we are actually not doing right now, what we are sparing, we are reducing. And the fact that it's no longer a stressed project for the company, it's, I think this is the best wins that we have. And of course, all the things that I can learn from past and so on, I think it's there. But those 3 points are my biggest wins.
A great summary. Thank you, Amit. And I think right on that note, we probably spot on time that we've managed to summarize that journey into a few slides and a lot of insights and points from you. So thank you, Amit, for everything you have shared. And Naomi, maybe just moving forward here into the Q&A session. I'm not sure if we do have any questions right now. I don't know if anyone on the call maybe has a hand up or would like to unmute.
If you want to ask a question, pop your hand up. If you want to type it into the chat, that's also you're also very welcome to do that, and I can allow you to speak. I have a quick question. So one of the things, and this might be completely off topic for you guys, but I think part of the, we see in the compliance framework, having gone through the process and understanding that you've had a look at your risks, you've set up some controls, you've done all that. One of the things that members raise all the time is that they're really concerned about responding to an incident. So not the PR side of it, there's all the statements you need to make, and they're all across the notifications you need to give to your customers if you think their privacy is being breached, for example, because that's a key concern for our members. But it's all around being able to confidently, or at least have a starting point to go back to look, where might the system have broken down? Do you think that going through a certification process helps with that? Because for a lot of members, it seems like it's valuable if you've got to give a third party the assurance that you've done everything. But, we like compliance frameworks because it gives you a sense of, okay, we can go back and we can drill down here. And see why that didn't work. Can you give any insights into customer experiences or even your experience of that, Amit? I'm not saying you've had a breach, but I'm just saying, is that something that you kind of thought into that process? Because that's a big concern for members, being able to, if you're hauled up by your board saying, how could this have happened? You've got something at least you can reference back to, I guess.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So first, I didn't have a first encounter with those incidents. But I think that this flow system certificate, you will call it, no matter how, it forces you to think about that. It forces you to deal with that every time. We're doing that twice a year, right? And then it's on you to just think and understand what you're going to do with that. Right. So now that this project that I was mentioning actually reduced a lot, right? I have some bandwidth. So we're doing a lot of other stuff that we didn't do before because we didn't have the time for that, right? The most pressure thing called time. But now we're doing a lot about security and think what we really want and need to promote. So we are doing drills, right? We are doing drills like that. We are updating the documents in the findings. Not that this is like for the auditors or something like that, but it's just for us, right? We did this drill. These are some points that worth mentioning. So we did a drill for the audit. We could just have like a written document, but we had the time. We wanted to do more, and the lesson learned and so on. So it gives us some confidence that we know how to handle things like that if they come. And I think that the certificate forces you to think about that, that's for sure. And going with, automation platform like Scytale actually free up some time for people to actually do that. So I think this is my 2 cents here.
I mean, I love a good organized, documented system because then you're not scrambling to know where to start looking. So there's always that. Now we have got some questions from the audience, and this is getting technical, so I'll bat it to whoever wants to answer it. So how does the evidence gathering integration work with on-premises or cloud systems?
Perfect. I'm happy to tackle that one. So obviously concern around data security and what we actually have access to. So we have a variety of different connections. You can create policies and use different keys, or we have API key integrations as well. We do have, if you would like to go and look through all the technical documentation, we have a help center and all our integration guides published online as well, because it's obviously a big concern for every single customer. Yes, you want the benefits of connecting integrations, but you want that assurance and security of what we actually are collecting and have that access to. So each guide, like I've just mentioned now, there's different connections depending on what you prefer, how your organization works, and then as well as every single permission published, what we need access to. And very much maybe just 2 points worth mentioning: read-only permissions in every case. There's nothing that needs any write access. We want to just pull that data, and the permissions are linked only to any resource or information we need for the audit specifically.
Cool. And that sort of flows into, do you have SaaS only, or can you do on-premises as well? Is that a similar question?
So slightly different, and I assume we're talking about connecting to integrations, whether they are SaaS hosted or on-prem. SaaS, obviously, there's a I don't want to say a much bigger draw for this, but a ton of customers do have that. Very good timing for the question, actually, because on-prem will be available in the app from this quarter. So to answer the question, both being supported.
Rightio. And then another one, can you customize the compliance frameworks or requirements for local regulators? Because there are some extra layers. So I saw you had the GDPR one, but we're obviously not GDPR.
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus, first and foremost, I don't know if focus is the right word, but is to go with frameworks where there are requirements that we have deployed, the SOCs, the ISOs, your HIPAAs, your GDPRs. But the platform is continuously expanding. So I mean, in that one slide I showed, you can see the current frameworks that are supported, but very much, yes, the platform is also moving to a direction that if you had a custom framework, you as the customer will have that ability to create a framework suited to your specific requirements and needs, can populate the controls, and then obviously leveraging off integrations and the automatic evidence, get the full value out of it.
And the last one I've got here, unless someone wants to type in something, do you have any customers in the banking industry?
We do, yes, we've got customers across the board, and I think pretty much every different sector. I'm not too sure what I am and aren't supposed to reveal in terms of customer names, so I won't drop any names, but yes, we do. We've got customers in various different banking and fintech spaces as well. Obviously, frameworks that they're going through depends on what their requirements are at the time.
Thank you. And thank you, audience, for those good questions. Any other questions? Feel free to type them in. Doesn't even tell me who's asked the question. So there you go. You can ask anything you like.
And of course, maybe just to add on anything that I have answered from this, if there's any specific questions or probing questions further to what I've said, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to have a further discussion on that if anything I've answered maybe seems a bit too light or high level or hasn't quite answered it.
No, I appreciate that. And Adrian's email's up there. Adrian will definitely forward those through for technical questions. I guess the last quick question I'll throw in, because I know we're running out of time around this, is I'm now going to throw to you, Kyle, is how well are you finding people understanding and really appreciating that risk? Or are you finding that consulting side, whether it's you or whoever, giving the industry an idea about the risks is a big part of it? Because I think one of the fears our members have is that it's such an unfamiliar and ever-changing world, and the risks change all the time. It's even understanding what they might be. You know what you want to protect, but understanding how it could come at you and how it could materialize. Are you finding that as a general rule, people need guidance with that, or are you finding that they are thinking that through not too bad?
Look, I think if we, and focusing on a specific framework like ISO, it depends, as always. If you've got a customer that's coming in that has a requirement, they need a complete ISO, but they know nothing about it. There's very much that ground up approach in coaching and understanding. Like you said, you want to protect things, but if we take a startup, your focus, yes, is on security, but first and foremost, it's on generating a profitable business. So being able to provide that additional support from a consulting side to say, cool, you're on the right track, but here are maybe some other avenues you need to explore or look into. And I mean, going through a framework for a startup or an established organization by means of the remediation and preparation for an audit, you're going to put those processes and controls in place in any case. In order to meet the criteria and principles and the different objectives, you need to have well-established risk assessment processes from a high-level policy perspective, or flow that through to actual risk assessments that are going to look at your IT risks, your business risks, holistically for the organization, and actually be able to track that through to a remediation. I mean, just focusing on one specific risk example. So a customer that doesn't have that in place will have it in place by the time they're ready to face the auditor. So yes, you're getting the audit readiness, but you're getting a lot more value than that because you actually have a really well-defined process in place. so going back to your question, it does depend. You obviously get some customers that really want to just get things done as quickly as possible, and they get that value. I don't even want to say indirectly, but the focus is on the certification. They get the additional levels of security by means of going through it. You have other cases where customers really want to understand everything from start to finish.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sorry. And Amit, I know that it sounds like your business is actually quite tech-based. So your staff were quite savvy already with the concepts behind what you needed to do and what the risks might be.
So, thinking about more than just the audits and the specific of the audits, I think that it's a state of mind, right? So I am honored to do that the 9th time. So I think that within my organization, it's well baked. But whenever we are doing such process, and we're doing that twice a year, it's something that come into mind, right? So there are use cases that we are just thinking, okay, so what if this will happen? And what if the other will happen? And part of that is baked already in the controls in the process. And part of that we're just discussing. And, putting that as a note in, presenting that to the our committee or something like that, saying, okay, we found a use case, a new use case, right? We don't need to tackle it now, but it came to mind. Someone thought about that because he was working on reviewing some evidence or whatever. And we will tackle that for next year or for the next audit, something like that. So it is an iterative thing. And I think that the benefit of that is just having that raised up, discussed. Sometimes you need someone to force you to discuss those stuff. So this is the certificate. And then, we are doing that. We are logging that, and we are thinking about that. Yes, the risks are coming, changing. We all know that, right? It's evolving. So you need to put that on the back of your hand, and it's a good thing that someone actually reminds you to do that twice a year.
Brilliant. Thank you. We've got a question. I don't know whether you've got it in the deck, Kyle. Just if it's possible to flick back to a slide, some of the tools that can be integrated into the Scytale platform. But if you don't, that's okay. We can always send that out later.
Whatever you prefer. I can pull it up very quickly. I do have it in that one. Let me go back to here. So here's maybe a nice bit of insights. I mean, I won't run through and name every single one, but I mean, you can see we've got source control tools, we've got GitHub and GitLab, we've got Bitbucket, we've got different HR tools. There's Bamboo, there's HiBob, there's your different ticketing systems, there's Zendesk, there's Jira, there's Intercom, and now really I'm starting to name things. There's ClickUp. You've got your different source control. Sorry, I've mentioned those already. You've got your different cloud providers, your AWSs, your Azures, your GCPs, vulnerability scannings, SNCC and the like. You've got your endpoint management, Intune, JumpCloud, Jamf. Yeah, that's maybe quite a good starting point for the list of them. There's Datadog as well, Monday. I hope that gives some insight, but yeah, everything is on the platform as well, or if you just do a search for Scytale or reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to just send you everything with regards to that.
Familiar with about 3 of those, but anyway, that's pretty typical. Well, look, thank you. I'm really sorry to those attendees who might have been just about to ask a question. If you're super quick while I say thank you to our speakers for very generously giving us their time today. I know that there are completely different time zones to us. It's a very nice and very convenient 4 p.m. for us. So thank you very much. Oh, we've got one quick last question. Oh, no, it was just a thank you. Thank you as well. Anyone with questions, reach out directly. Adrian's email was on there and we will definitely share that information as well. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Amit. It was very kind of you to take us through that process and to spend time with us today.
Thanks,
Sure,
Naomi.
no problem.
And thank you, Amit.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you to everyone that joined us. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be.